You've heard it, I've heard it, the whole world has heard it. Elon Musk is buying Twitter, but let me tell you the story that no one else is going to give you. If you're as shocked as I am that I did homework, it's okay. There's a lot to cover here and I need to stay on point. So I'm going to read a little bit off my phone. Make sure to stay to the end. There's a lot to break down here that the media is not covering. So as you know, Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla and of SpaceX, has now bought Twitter for $44 billion. But has he really bought Twitter? And the answer is no. He's got a long way to go, and there's a lot of steps between now and there in order to close this transaction. He's in the process of buying Twitter. So let's fill in the gaps where the media left off. For a little bit of history, before Musk's takeover, the largest shareholder was Vanguard Group, a little more than 10% of a stake according to CNN Business. Other top institutional investors included Morgan Stanley Investments, BlackRock Fund Advisors, and some others. But remember Morgan Stanley. Most of Twitter is owned by private companies and investment groups. Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, was previously Twitter's largest individual shareholder before Musk invested the company and owned about 2% of the company, according to Bloomberg. So even Elon Musk coming in and buying 9.2% owned almost 5 times as much as the CEO and founder before he left the company. Just for some perspective. Earlier this year, when Elon Musk came in and bought that 9.2% in stake in Twitter, that much stock earned him a possible seat on the board, at least an offer, which he ultimately accepted and then rejected in a part of his hostile or leveraged buyout position. And we're going to get into what a leveraged buyout is and how that actually functions as we go through this. According to National World, when the deal is finalized, Twitter will have an offer of a tender offer to investors to have their shares bought out at the price agreed upon between Twitter and Musk. Right now, that number is somewhere in the $54 range, but it's still to be determined. And why? There are 2 critical steps coming up: regulatory approval and shareholder approval. Then, once those things are done, the automatic payouts will start once those approvals are received, and the company becomes a privatized company. It's no longer a public company. Elon Musk owns this. He can do whatever the hell he wants with it, and the primary regulator is no longer the SEC. So with the money deposited into the account that was used to purchase the stock, the shareholders that effectively agree to this at the current price would probably get about $54.20 per share of stock they own. They're going to get paid out and they're going to go about their separate way, which is more than the stock's currently trading at, but still less than its highest historical price. Why? Twitter's not profitable, Twitter's not making money, and despite all the rhetoric, nobody was, really eager to buy Twitter. So the approval from the regulators is a critical part of this. Let's get into it because there's not any coverage that I found in the media about this. So it still needs the approval. In addition to the final check by the books of Musk, which is a term of this purchase, he has the obligation to check and make sure that all the information that he's seen financially matches up with what he should expect. But because they're SEC regulated, it's likely to be that the books and what he was told and what he thinks the company looks like inside are going to line up. So after that, Elon Musk will then go through the process of the regulators in the US, the Federal Trade Commission, and the European Commission must review the deal to make sure that no antitrust laws will be broken during this acquisition. So don't expect to see changes immediately. If you're looking for new rollouts and new features at Twitter, it's going to be stalled for about 6 months until this entire transaction is wrapped up. And it's going to be a long 6 months. So as it stands right now, we don't even know if Musk wants to be the company's new CEO or he should name somebody else to run it. And that's kind of critical because, frankly, he doesn't have that much bandwidth. How are you going to run SpaceX? How are you going to run Tesla? And now you're going to run Twitter? It seems to me that, and it seems to reason that he might put somebody else in charge there who will effectively run his vision, whatever that ultimately may be, but nobody's talking about it. But one thing is clear, the board is likely to be wiped out. If you've been looking for the board on Twitter, you're not going to find them because almost none of them actually use Twitter. How are you going to be the management oversight of a business you don't actively use? It seems a little hypocritical at best, and Jack Dorsey was critical. So were there other buyers? There's rumors that Cisco was possibly interested. There was private equity firms that were out there in the ether, but nobody wanted to buy them. Nobody wants to buy a company that's not profitable, especially when you compare them to Meta, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Snapchat, companies that are all profitable and significantly more so than Twitter is, which is losing money. Why would you buy them? But then again, Twitter is also an aging platform. It's a lot of older users, a lot of, politicians, a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space. It's not quite for everyone. And it certainly isn't used by the masses, at least not mass adoption. Another problem with Twitter. So how did he finance this? Financing is an interesting part of this equation that everybody has left out. They've kind of given brief statements. I'm going to give you the broad overview. So it's kind of complicated, but Elon Musk, the owner of SpaceX and Tesla, the richest man in the world, according to Forbes, with a fortune of just short of $300 billion. But even with his billions of dollars, Musk needed some help to get $44 billion for one of the largest privatizations of companies in history. He is reportedly using his own cash for about 2/3 of the purchase price, including $21 billion in cash. Another $12.5 billion in shares of Tesla will be used to secure loans from several banks, including Morgan Stanley and Bank of America. And I told you Morgan Stanley would be important. That's why. They have a financial interest in getting paid out on the backside of this as a large shareholder, as much as they do of financing this particular transaction, something that no one has addressed, but is a real fact. The remaining money comes from Twitter's own assets. Musk is buying the company in a leveraged buyout, a corporate buyout using mainly loans or bonds, and in this case, one that takes it private. By doing a leveraged buyout, Musk can use the assets of the company he's acquiring as collateral for the remaining loans. So even though it's cash flow negative, he's still using the assets, the intellectual property, and the working infrastructure of Twitter as a security in the form of a UCC and other specific, well, frankly, collateral positions for the lenders to get some type of recourse liability in the event this doesn't work out and they have to take ownership of Twitter. About $21 billion of this money came from a loan from Morgan Stanley borrowed against his own Tesla stock, added to about the $13 billion in cash we already talked about. So why buy Twitter? The majority of people not on Twitter, it has been treated like a platform for older people, like we referenced. He has bought essentially influence and power over the media, and this is a particular microphone for journalists. And journalism usually runs with headlines from here. How many times do you turn on CNN or CNBC or any news channel that you might follow and you see a tweet by somebody? It's because journalists frequent the platform and they then take that information and they amplify it out. So he does have a vehicle to get into the mainstream media outside of this freedom of speech platform that he seems to allude to be building. There's a lot of future inherent value in this structure. So what can you do to make people go to Twitter and make it profitable? It's currently the largest source of revenue is from advertisers. But that is a concept that Musk has openly stated that he hates. He doesn't like the ads on Twitter. There's a couple different ways you can do this, one of which a subscription service. He's already talked about possibly you giving your credit card and your ID. But one of the things he's been able to do with that in theory is he can eliminate the bots and the foreign entities that are using these bots to kind of manipulate the journalists and the news and the media. And this way we all get verified check marks. You get one, I get one, everyone gets one, as long as you provide your driver's license and your credit card, for example, and possibly be a subscription service, or maybe even sell the back-end API to advertisers, or you find some creative way to do it. Who knows? He's Elon Musk. He's brilliant. He's probably going to come up with something. So what do we know for sure? We know that Musk stated that he wants to make a platform more amenable to free speech, and he wants to fight the egregious amount of bots and scams on it. Elon Musk will need to know how to calibrate whatever the hell he has interpreted to be free speech. And when I say calibrate, you need to understand that you can't just say you're going to have open free speech for everyone, because there are things like hate speech, violent speech, and all the things that the algorithm automatically stops. And while it's arguable that the algorithm has stopped too much and people like Trump, whether you love him or hate him, have been banned from the platform, that it's gone too far. But the question is, where does that limit look like? Where is that limit sit at? What does it look like? How do you moderate what is truly free? Can someone say, I'm going to kill you or I'm going to hurt you? Can they do things that are criminally prohibited? And will they do them if we have a subscription-based service where your name and your information is linked to a verified account? Because if you can't do it truly anonymously, would you do it? So it's an interesting paradigm. It's an interesting time. There are lots of things from a legal perspective and free speech perspective, from a financing perspective, and frankly, from a timeline perspective that are not going on in the media. If you think you're going to see resolution to this in the next 5 to 6 months, it's going to take a long time, and you probably won't know until about 6 months from now. You'll hear bits and pieces in the media along the way, the FTC, the European Commission, but this is an international approval that's required. And after that, maybe, just maybe, it closes. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you learned something. Hopefully you'll catch a little bit more information than you get in the media. Subscribe, hit the link button. We'll see you next time.